Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the She Writes Dangerously panel. I'm so excited. My name is Ashley Rayner. I'm a librarian at NORC at the University of Chicago. I'm talking to you from dangerously cold Chicago right now, and I'll be moderating this session. If so, these are thrillers, and they are all scary. They all had me shook in a good way. Like it was just amazing. I'm so excited to talk to all of these authors. I'm excited to introduce them to you, and you to them. Here they are right now. My first is Ilona Bannister, author of Five, published by Crown. Caro Claire Burke, author of Yesteryear, published by Knopf. Leodora Darlington, author of the Exes, published by Dutton. Isha Raya, author of You'll Never Forget Me by Bantam. And last but certainly not least, Jennifer Vanderkloot, author of The Better Mother by Crooked Lane. So we are going to do something new to me, and we are going to ask all of the panelists to do a quick elevator speech on their book to kind of wet your whistle or their whistle. I don't know whose whistle is going to be wet. So I'm going to start with Alana. Give us a quick rundown of five, please.
Hi, yeah, I'd love to. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great. So five is the story of five strangers on a train platform, and in 5 minutes, one of them will die. They don't know it, but you do. The child, the mother, the businessman, the old woman, and the gambler, and you will find yourself judging by the end who you think deserves to survive and who you think should die.
Judge, jury, and executioner. I love it.
Yeah.
Caro, can you please tell us about your book, Yesteryear?
Sure, my novel is about a woman who sells a pioneer fantasy online to millions of followers until one day she wakes up in the time period that she has been aestheticizing. And so now she has to find her way out, and the reader moves back and forth between the 1800s time period and with the present day time period, trying to figure out what's taking place until you get to the very end.
As someone who loves to watch those kind of influencers but would never want to be one, I love this. The concept was so interesting to me. Leodora, author of the Exes, please tell us about your book.
Hello. So the Exes opens with our protagonist, Natalie, who's clutching a knife, terrified that she's going to use it to murder her husband, who is crying next door. And usually, if you don't want to kill someone, you just don't do it. So the book then looks back at her previous relationships with maybe dead exes, and this relationship with her husband to figure out why she feels so capable of killing him in the first place.
If you don't want to kill someone, usually you just don't. I love that's
True.
very, yeah, it's honestly true. Isha, please give us a rundown of You'll Never Forget Me.
Yeah, You'll Never Forget Me is about a struggling actress who accidentally kills her rival. And then as she lands her dream leading role, she has to clean up her mess and also evade the private investigator who's on her trail and also kind of fight this growing fascination that they have with each other.
It had an old Hollywood vibe that I really enjoyed, so thank you. My next last again is Jennifer, author of The Better Mother. Please give us your synopsis.
Sure. Uh, our protagonist is Savannah. She's 34 years old. She just got out of a very long relationship, and the end of it hit her very hard. So after about a year, she finally feels like she's putting her life back together, and maybe she's even ready to put herself out there and date again. She meets a man named Max at a bar. They have a short, casual fling, but neither one of them were looking for anything serious. So it fizzles out. They lose touch, and about a month later, she finds out she's pregnant, and she gets in touch to tell him, only to find out he's just gotten back together with his ex-girlfriend. So that's going to make things very tricky. And at first, his new girlfriend seems very nice, but as time goes on and the pregnancy progresses, we find out that she has some ulterior motives and maybe some sinister plans for Savannah and her baby.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're gonna get into questions. Audience, if you have questions, please pop them in that Q&A, and we will try to get to them as best we will. My first question is for Leodora, author of The Exes. Can you talk about where your idea for the story came from? I, like most people, have had a bad ex story, so I'm not saying it's right, but I understand where Natalie's coming from.
Yeah, I think almost everyone knows what it's like to want to murder their partner, regardless of background. Sort of when I tell people about it, the number of people who immediately laugh at that line. I think most people get it, but what I was really interested in was how differences in backgrounds in a relationship can really alter the dynamic. I guess how differences can introduce not just conflict, but danger. So whether that's a disparity in gender, race, wealth, class, how those things can suddenly make what's meant to be a safe space very unsafe. I also really enjoyed the idea of playing with memory and trauma. It's something that's always really fascinated me. And with Natalie, this fear of not committing these murders. Um, I don't know, she was just such an interesting character. There's a lot of female rage characters that I've really enjoyed in the zeitgeist of late, but really getting to grips with someone who's not super confident about killing, but really afraid of it and why that is. And those little sort of blank spots in her memory, that was something I really enjoyed playing with too. So, I mean, I barely scratched the surface. There are a lot of things in the story I really enjoyed sort of digging into, but those are one of the main things that I started with as inspiration. Ultimately, though, I really wanted it to be fun. When I was thinking about the story, I knew that I had these big meaty themes, but I wanted it to be twisty, although it had something to say, not super, super heavy. And blending all those things together ended up as the sort of foundation for it.
I think that idea of like you're looking at the differences between people's backgrounds and what conflicts those introduce. We had, I think some people see that more than others, but I think that idea is
Mm,
really interesting, and it does come out in the book. It's not like I wouldn't call it the focus, but it's definitely in the background. And I think as a person of color reading it, I was like, yeah, I can see where this would be an issue in certain times. So that
mm.
was it's a really fascinating themes for this book that you don't really see in a lot of thrillers. I feel like so it's cool.
It's true. There aren't very many thrillers, at least on the UK side of things,
Yeah.
that explore sort of less common identities.
Yeah,
I'll say.
yeah, for sure. And that's a lot of, I mean, and we'll talk to Isha about this, but I thought that was interesting too. I don't know if I've ever read a thriller. I like thrillers, but I don't know if I've ever read one with like a South Asian protagonist. I think I've read a couple with black protagonists, but so it's really interesting to see these different commonalities come across. Ilana, this question is for you, author, Ilana Bannister, author of the Five. This is not a spoiler. You literally just said it. It's announced during the beginning of the book. One of the titular five in this book dies by train. Why did you decide to use a train as your novel's killer?
So I think I was thinking less about the train and more about the train platform because a train platform is something that's really familiar to millions of people who use them every day. And I think we take for granted that they're safe, but it's actually an inherently extremely dangerous place. There's machinery, there's weather, there's narrow spaces, there's stressed out people, there's speed, there's electricity. And we have this kind of social contract among strangers when we stand there that we're all going to behave a certain way because we have somewhere to go. And I think that's fascinating that we all just kind of adhere to that. And I'm really interested in very ordinary places where that everyone can relate to and has seen and has experience with, but where something extraordinary can happen. And that was the kind of the perfect place for me to put these five people and see what they will do.
That's really it does. I don't think I'll ever look at a train platform the same way again, just
Yeah,
because
that was kind
it's
of I was hoping that would happen.
it's the connect, but it's like yeah, we're all different, but we're all connected by this like this literal artery through the city that we all have to ride on, and so I think
Mhm.
that I mean, I've never been in the situation of these characters, but I'm like this is relevant to me in this way, so I thought that was a great way to connect it to people. My next question is for Caro Claire Burke, author of Yesteryear. I am both fascinated and repulsed by influencers, especially the live off the land with your seven kids variety. Um, what drew you to write about this particular subculture?
I think it was just it was everywhere I looked at the time period that I started thinking about yesteryear. And I think it's really fascinating how much ire we reserve for influencers. I think it's not accidental that that's an industry that's very gendered. Like that's an industry that's pretty dominated by women. And influencers often serve as mirrors of the parts of our culture and the parts of our own lives that we don't really like to think about. So when you think about consumerism, when you think about who is responsible for domestic labor at home, when you think about like what the expectations are for a mother or a wife, these things are all kind of amplified and reflected back to you within an influencer and really within advertising at large. But now that influencers serve as the advertisements for the things that you want to buy, I think that there's so much emotion wrapped up in there. And I really became kind of obsessed with the idea of pushing these theories that these influencers kind of push, these like non-realities to the furthest limit. And so it just seemed like a really fun way to stretch out all these binaries.
Yeah, there's one I love where she like cleans up everything. I don't really clean a whole lot because I have people, I
Me
do
neither.
other stuff. But I'm like, oh, what if if I bought these little packages of wipes and brought them with me? Maybe I'll be that person. And so I'm like, no,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna buy that. I'm not gonna do that. It's not real. And so, I think that tension between reality and fantasy and like the advertising and like real life is really interesting. So I see it. I see the vision. My next question is for Isha Raya, author of You'll Never Forget Me. In your dedication, you say that you were tired of writing about main characters and you wanted to write about villains instead. 'Cause villains are more fun. What made you want to flip the script and write from a villain's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, writing queer stories, because You'll Never Forget Me is a sapphic thriller. Throughout like media history, there is like a history of villains being very queer coded. Which like I think of him from Powerpuff Girls, I think of like Ursula from The Little Mermaid, and like these characters, they're so beloved and they're cultural icons, but like for being cultural icons, they're not very like explored. There's not a lot of depth. And so this is me kind of like expanding on that and kind of like reclaiming that because Dimple, she is a villain and she does make a lot of bad decisions, but you also get to see her interiority, you get to grow with her and you get to sympathize with her at times too. Which I thought was really cool. And yeah, I think writing villains is more fun in general anyway, because I feel like narratively villains get to be more dramatic and like unhinged and entertaining.
Yeah, it makes me think of like Scar. Once you see that, like think about that, like the villains being queer coded, it's like you cannot unsee it. And there's so many instances where this happens. But it does, I mean, like to me, the villains in Disney movies always have the best songs anyway, so it all kind of comes together. My next question is for Jennifer Vanderkloot, author of The Better Mother. Your book taps into a primal fear of motherhood where someone is possibly trying to take a child away. Being a mother yourself, and I'm a mom, so I was like, oh my God, what is happening here? Why did you make this the plot of your book? And how did you make this fear palpable for non-mothers?
Well, I think we're women in general, we're hard on ourselves. And becoming a new mother for the first time, I think everyone can relate to being unsure of yourself. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. How am I going to know what to do when this happens or this happens? So I thought that was very relatable, and I'm a mother myself, so something I definitely experienced. And in Savannah's world, it's kind of like everything just piles on her all at once. Her engagement to her boyfriend of many years ended, and they had been wanting to plan a family. And then when it came time, when they said, when this age and we get to this career milestone, he decided, I'm actually not ready. I don't want to do that after all. And so she's really down on herself already. She loses her fiance, she loses her job. And then a year later, she's finally putting her life back together. And then, bam, the first time she goes out on a date, she accidentally gets pregnant. And single parenthood was something I really wanted to explore with this book as well. It always seems to fall on the women. You don't see as many single dads out there, but um, so that makes her even more unsure of herself. And so she's like, I got to find a new apartment, I got to find a new job, and now I have to figure out how to be a single mom. And then in comes the father of her child's new girlfriend, and she seems like the perfect woman. And so she's comparing herself to her, thinking, how am I going to pay for this and that? And that's all really difficult. But then I think a lot of moms have had that moment where all of a sudden your child's life is threatened. And suddenly it's like every question I have about myself, every, um, self-conscious thought, like that all goes out the window. And that mama bear comes in, and you're threatening my child. All of a sudden, I am powerful. I am superhuman. I can do anything that needs to be done to save my child. And so that's kind of how Savannah learns to trust herself again and find her confidence, is that she's like, no matter what, I'm going to protect my child. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, I do have this inner strength that I didn't realize.
It's wild when you have a kid because they just hand you the baby. They're like, okay, good luck. And you're like, wait, I don't, what am I gonna do with this baby? I don't know. I don't even know this kid. Like, what's going on? So it's just, it is funny those moments where
No,
it's like, oh
I was thinking about that the other day. When I mean, I think I went through like 40 hours of labor with
yeah.
my first child. It was terrible. And then after all of that, the emergency C-section and everything. And so it's kind of like, phew, I got through that. And then, like you say, they hand you the baby and you have to go home. And it's like, wait, can't I have a good night's sleep first? Just one good
No,
night's sleep, and then I'll be a super mom. But
they
no,
don't, they don't even say good luck. They're just like, all right, bye.
yep. Good luck.
My next question is for Ilona. You've got five different perspectives that all have to come together in a satisfying way. How do you, oh no, oh, I mixed up my order, but I'll just go with this one. How do you keep all the threads of your story straight?
Well, I wish that I was like one of those people who has color-coded post-it notes and is organized and had everything lined up, but writing doesn't work for me that way. And so I sort of describe it as like I hear voices of these characters that want to tell me something, and then I have to sort of push them into the structure. And what happens is, I do A and then I do B and then I got to C, but character C, what they did meant that A and B, what they were doing didn't make sense. So you have to go back and I had to redo A and B. And then when we got to D, the same thing happened. And it's not a very efficient way to write. And I wouldn't recommend it. But for me, that's how I get spontaneity in the work because I let the characters do what they need to do and then I did fix it up after. And it allows actually for twists and turns to open up that I hadn't thought of when I was writing A and B. I didn't think of them until I got to D. So it was very messy and time consuming, but that's actually how the book got done. If you can outline, I think that's so much better. But yeah, that's how these guys came together.
It's just so interesting that you say that because to me the book is tight. You know what I mean? Like it's not you're talking about it being messy, but it's tight. It comes together
Yeah.
really in a tight way, and so it's just so interesting that that's your process. I love it.
Thank
I
you. I'm
love
so
hearing
glad you
about
think that. That's good.
yeah.
That's a big
No,
compliment. Thank
that's
you.
yeah, for sure. My next question is for Leodora. Uh, I love how many unknown unknowns there are in this novel for us and Natalie, even up until the end. How do you know when to reveal what to deliver the greatest impact? I want to hear the secret sauce.
The secret sauce. Well, just first and foremost, actually, Ilona, if it makes you feel any better, I did plot everything out for this book, and this was the first time I did it. But by the time it comes to the edits and I'm changing one thing or another, it's just as messy. So when you've got lots of different twists going on, but twists in general and thrillers, they're tough because people who really love thrillers and really love them, read a lot in this area. It's hard to surprise a reader. I think ultimately a good reveal, or at least what I was really focusing on in the X's, was reveals that make you feel something. There has to be some kind of emotional resonance there. You have to care. And a lot of that then requires building empathy around the characters. The characters in the book, they make some choices. They do some things. And even if their decisions or their actions aren't necessarily the most understandable, understanding why they've done it, even if you don't agree with what they've done, I think is key. And then sort of feeling invested when you find out, oh my God, this is actually what the deal is with them. So that's where a lot of the work was in really connecting the reader to those characters emotionally. And people are being very kind. The reader's being very kind about the twist so far. Some nice jaw drop comments. So hopefully that's kind of paid off.
It's so interesting that you say that because I hate to read a book and there's a twist and I'm like, I don't care because I don't know these people or it doesn't matter to me. And there's one twist in particular in your book, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's one twist where I was like, oh no. And that because I cared, like because I was like, oh, this relationship is
Thank
so important and now it's the way it is and I'm just like it mattered because I cared about the characters, so that's a really good way to think about it.
you. It's a lot.
um yeah, Caro, this question is for you and it's so funny because there's two, like I said, there's two Natalie main characters. So your Natalie from Yesteryear has a dark inner monologue that's a very strong contrast to her perfect outer shell. How did you make her hypocrisy so compelling? How did you make us care, like Leodora was just talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't hypocrisy to me when I was writing it because I think that when you're in her, like Natalie, I mean, I think a lot of people feel this way, but I've also written before and I haven't felt this way. Like, I think sometimes you'll write characters and you're proud of them, but they don't feel real to you. And Natalie felt very real to me to the point that, like, it was not hard for me ever to know what she would do in a circumstance. And so I don't I don't think I meant for her to be hypocritical. I think that I knew very clearly what her moral framework of the world was. Like there were a set of rules that she abided by that do not match the set of rules that I have. But it was really interesting because once I had that set of rules, which are basically the rules that women grow up with in these very like religious fundamentalist communities, it was very easy for me to look at myself and see how she would view me, or to like have her run into someone from school and to see how she would view it. And so the hypocrisy and even like her kind of humor was almost an accident because I was really just trying to like move through the world with her moral framework. But I think that her understanding of the world and what is right and wrong is constantly coming up against everyone else's understanding of what is right and wrong. And so it leads to this like you're saying, constant hypocrisy and like fourth wall break that felt really absurd. And so once I noticed that, I was like, oh, this is so much fun. She's so ridiculous, and every scenario she gets into is either terrifying or funny or like unbelievably uncanny because she can never understand. She always misunderstands what someone is thinking or saying. So that was kind of how it started, is just having her moral framework and moving from there.
I think, and I said hypocrisy, but I think for her, it's not hypocrisy. It's just like
Right.
the way
She
she
would think we're
thinks.
hypocrites.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But like, is really not like it in her mind. It makes perfect sense. And so the
Yeah.
fact that you made somebody who I really don't agree with make perfect sense to me is really, it was really compelling.
Thank you.
Yeah. My next question is for Isha. And I hope I pronounced this right. So Dimple is the main character. She's the villain that we talked about earlier, but she comes up against Safi. Did I say that right? I didn't.
Safi. Hmm.
Safi, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Midwestern Safi, I'm sorry. Safi, a private investigator. So they kind of butt heads. They're drawn to each other, possibly because they're so alike despite being on opposite sides. What makes them similar?
Yeah, I mean, they do have very different like moral compasses at the start of the story for sure. Um, they are also they're both very heavily affected by people's perception of them. Dimple, more obviously, she is an actress. She also has to compete, unfortunately, against another South Asian actress, for a lot of the same roles, and they're both kind of told that you both can't succeed on because you look too similar unless one of you wants to be a stunt double for the other one. And then Safi, she's the daughter of a senator, like Arizona's only Indian senator. So her family has a lot of pressure to be kind of perfect and polished and uphold these certain moral values. It's this idea that like to be a woman is to perform. They both have very judgmental eyes on them. And they are also both actors in a way because they put on this facade because at the end of the day, like ultimately they do want to deliver despite these sort of unfair expectations that are put on them.
Yeah, I thought that was the idea of can only be one. It made me th like I've thought about that all of like with a lot of like black actors. There's only like there can only be like one male black actor that everyone uses, and the rest of them are just like side or like not. They can't be the stars, and so it's just so unfortunate that we're still dealing with that. It's still playing out on movie screens as we speak. So I was like, man, like I'm so sorry for Dimple because she really wanted it, and I mean, I guess she got it in the way that she got it, but. My next question is for Jennifer. Savannah, the main character, is the kind of character who I really like to read about because every so often she makes a decision and I go, no, when I'm reading. And my family is like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. How do you make a character frustrating yet relatable?
Just by making her human. And it's so funny that you say that, and I'm so glad you say that. Actually, that was kind of a hurdle I ran into when my agent was shopping this book around. Is a lot of the feedback we got back was like I just could not get on board with some of the decisions she made. They were so stupid. I think one early reader called her as dumb as a bag of bricks.
Oh no. I
Um,
thought I was like it's kind of like with Dimple where I or with the exes where I was like, I wouldn't do it, but I understand. I understand the urges, but I wouldn't do it. So like it's like my like the id, I guess, like my emotions coming out. So I got it. I was just like I wouldn't do it, but I get it. That's so funny.
Yeah, I just tried to make her human. You know, we're all flawed. We all make stupid mistakes sometimes. And it's funny because like my husband and I, whenever we watch a movie, like especially a thriller, you know, you find yourself yelling at the TV screen,
Yep,
like, don't go in there, don't do
yep.
that. And it's like, well, but if they listened to you, the movie would be over. You know? So you have to you got to run into those problems or where's the drama, right? So
That's true. And poor Savannah does go through some drama, so that's that's funny to hear. My next question is for Leodora, and I am nosy. Just gonna say that out loud. So I learned that Leodora was an editor before she was a writer. So how has your previous work as a writer, as an editor, publisher, informed your work writing, if at all?
Yes, it's a good question. So until very recently, until a matter of weeks ago, I was a publishing director, and I loved my job. I mean, I get to be surrounded by incredible storytellers. Like I work with some incredible authors like Geneva Rose, but it's almost a bit like having this cheat sheet because I've got so much market awareness and a sense of what readers love. But at the same time, when I was wanting to write, oh God, if you're thinking about reception or what people are going to think of your work, you just can't do it. It kills the creativity. So I kind of had to throw that all out the window or ignore it for a period of time. I guess I also really wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to play with structure and form and language in the way that the rule book doesn't usually say that you can. So it's a useful training ground, but also I went, I'm not going to worry about all of that stuff. My editors can sort of get to it when they work on the edits, and we can, yeah, think about the piece a bit more holistically then. So I think it was probably the right move, not being too bogged down by that experience. And I'd say I always used to tell my authors, don't, for example, read reviews. So far, I've been pleasantly surprised trying not to consume myself with them. It feels like being authentic to myself has worked. So thank God for that.
Well, it's hard because like every that is in libraries we have this idea of book for every reader. So your book may
Mm,
not be for so and so, but it might be for me. And so you can't write for
exactly.
so and so. You got to write for whoever it's for, if that makes any sense. So that I think that's really good
Exactly.
advice to think about.
Mm.
So my next question is for Ilona. There is I don't know what you would call this narrator. I found the perspective of the narrator of this book so interesting. It's like we've
Yeah.
already had a conversation within the pages before I ever met you.
Mm.
Why does your narrator talk directly to the reader like that?
I don't think I set out to do that when I started, but again, it was like a voice that was knocking at me that was saying, like, but I want to be snarky and judgmental and sarcastic. So can we do that, please? And um, actually, then it made a lot of sense to me because like, we've all stood in a public place surrounded by strangers and thought unkind, snarky thoughts about people around us. But the narrator actually, but the narrator actually says them. And that's very freeing to actually be able to put that down on paper. But I think it also then gives the reader permission to have those same thoughts and to be judgmental because they have like a conspirator they can be judgmental about all the characters with and do all the judging about because ultimately the book is about the fact that we don't know what people carry but we judge them anyway and they do it to us too. And the was a great vehicle for making that point but also very fun to get to actually write like the truthful comments which you don't ever say out loud.
As you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, she wrote a book for haters. Like she wrote a hater experience. I love that for you. But like it's true, like you don't, it's very
Mhm.
easy to judge people and not think about where they're coming from or what's going on in their
Yeah,
life. And then, when you actually talk to them, you're like, oh wait, like actually you're going through a
yeah,
similar thing. Like we can all relate to it. So but I
yeah,
did like the snarky narrator. That's usually the snark is my first language, and so I get
yeah.
to know people's stuff better. Um, Caro, can you tell us about the structure of your novel and how you decided to construct the story that way? You kind of talked about the going back and forth between the past and the present.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the structure of the novel, it's in three parts, and part one and part three take place over the course of one day. And then part two, which is the bulk of the novel, goes back and forth between the present and the past. So I'm actually curious if the other authors have written thriller before. I had not. And so when I knew I wanted to write Yesteryear, I knew that I wanted the chapters to be quick and propulsive, even just as a way for me to get through, because I had never written multiple timelines, anything like that. And then I read I wrote what I thought would be chapter one, and it ended up being like this 40-page weird thing where it's a day in her life, a day in Natalie's life, at the peak of her success. And so I loved this chapter, but I knew that the book couldn't work that way. And that's when I got the idea of having kind of like this three-part structure where you kind of immerse yourself in this person's life and you get this hint of these, pressure points and dams about to break, and then you flip in and you're moving back and forth. And so it was kind of accidental with me trying to find my way into a structure that I really wasn't used to writing. But I'm really happy with it now because I think it kind of works like a jump scare where you kind of get used to this kind of pacing, and then there's this big shift with part two, and you're kind of, I hope, off to the races.
It was a jump scare because I was like, wait, no, what? Like, I had to go back and reread. Because a lot of times, I'm reading all these books so I could talk to you guys about them. And I'm like, so I'm trying to go fast. But I'm like, wait, now hold on. Like, what did I just miss? And so I love when a
Mhm.
book makes you kind of stop and like go back and make sure you didn't miss anything. So it definitely, but that's a me problem. I don't know if that's everyone else. So, but I think it was great to kind of get a speed bump and like, wait, hold on, what's going on here? What were you gonna say, Leodora? I see you came
I
off
was
mute.
just curious. I had time to ask a question because I'm too curious in my own good. But it was really interesting hearing you talk, Caro, about that first chapter and how it changed. You probably don't know this, but I read your book on submission. And the twist is, it was brilliant. I loved it.
Oh my
And the
God,
twist
I'm so shy
really,
now.
I didn't want to make you shy about it, but the ending really took me by surprise without giving anything away.
Yeah.
I know my own book changed quite significantly from being on submission to the what's the final version of Twist. So I'm keen to know if your twist has changed at all, but also for the other panelists, like how much your endings
Yeah.
didn't. I'm just being lazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing where I don't want to derail the conversation because I would love to talk about this forever, but I had never written towards a twist. I knew the twist I wanted for this book from the jump. And when I sold the book, that was part of the conversation was basically taking what you have read and then making it work, making it land. And so I had a number of conversations. I think the best privilege I was afforded when selling the book was I basically got to workshop it with a bunch of smart people. And so
Yeah.
by the time I was finished and I was back to editing, I kind of had gotten all this feedback from some really, really smart people. And so we didn't change the twist, but we made it much better than what you read. And so that's kind of a relief. But it's really fun and it's really hard. And I think speaking to like the worry that when you know what the twist is, you're like, does the reader know it? Am I making it
Mm.
really obvious? And so playing with those signposts, I think I realized that when you're writing a thriller, I really had to lean more on other people because I lost my sense of how obvious is this? And usually I feel very comfortable writing in a silo. And so that was kind of fun, making it more collaborative and being like, should we leave a breadcrumb here more? What do you think? Can you send it? I made my agent like share it with everyone in her office and be like, can you have them read it for the first time and see how they feel? And so that was a new experience for me as a writer.
I can see
And
Ilana
thank you for
nodding.
reading it.
It was totally my pleasure.
Yeah.
We had a very, very fun time discussing it, but I didn't have the pleasure of reading other books on submission versus now. I could see Ilana nodding. Ashley, am I allowed to keep asking people questions? We have
Yeah,
time.
well, let's do one more.
Okay. All right. I was just curious as to what was resonating with you, Ilana, and then I'm going to shut up because this isn't my job. I know I'm not the
Um,
moderator.
I think that what you're talking about there, like that writing is so solitary, and especially when you're trying to do something that has mystery and twists and turns and tension. And it is just it's so wonderful because I had a similar experience where I was able to take a feedback from a lot of people, and it just like really feeds you, and it makes the book so much
Mhm.
better when you actually get to collaborate and actually hear what people think about what you've written. And I think it's such an important part of the process, because
Yeah.
I always think that like you write alone, but a book is actually made with a team because you really need
Yeah.
people to feed back to you, because otherwise you just hear your own echo and you go around in circles. It makes you crazy when you're
Yeah.
alone like that.
Very
But I
humbling.
totally, yeah.
Hard agree. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm done now, I promise,
Because
Ashley.
Leodora took over my panel, I'm going to jump around a little bit with the questions. I'm definitely not upset about it or anything. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to ask Isha, the plots aren't the same, but this book gave me old Hollywood, all about Eve vibes. Like that, I know it's not quite the same, but somehow that was just in the back of my head. Why was Hollywood the perfect setting for your thriller?
Oh my goodness. I'm actually so glad you said that because I've gotten feedback from a lot of early readers saying similar things, that it gives them old Hollywood vibes, even though this is a contemporary novel. Um, But it's so fun because I actually envisioned Dimple like purposefully putting on a transatlantic accent when she speaks because she loves old movies and she's also insufferable. So I feel like she would eat that up. She would love that. But yeah, so this idea it started off as you know, I wanted to write about a villain character, and so I thought I'll write about an assassin. And so I was kind of ruminating over what would be a good day job or a good cover story for an assassin. And like, would you believe that serial killing and acting, they actually have a lot of transferable skills. Like you have to be really good at lying, you have to be good at like charming people, you have to be good at like improvising. And so I was like, wait, this is kind of perfect. And sort of naturally, as I did more research with Hollywood and the acting vibes kind of took over the story. Um, and yeah, I think Hollywood, it really lends itself to as a setting just to so much festering like resentment, like betrayal, you know, ambition. And so once I saw that path, I couldn't not go down it.
That's so funny. If I know Old Buddy was an old movie, but please watch it. It's an amazing one, and like I think it's interesting because again, this is a contemporary novel, but it still has the same vibes. Also, now I have to reread it with Dimple with the transatlantic accent. It's hilarious. And this questions for Jennifer. Savannah, the protagonist, does not have a huge friend group, but she has a ride or die best friend in Ellie who kind of supports her through all the drama that she gets put through. What was the inspiration for their tight friendship?
It's just something that I think every woman, girl, boy, man needs. Everyone needs a ride or die best friend. A little bit of background is that Savannah, her father left her and her mother when she was a baby, so she has no memories of him, and they grew up just the two of them, almost like Gilmore Girl style. Like, you know, even though they struggled and, you know, money was an issue and supporting an entire family on one income was difficult, she's like, you know, we were best friends. We were there for each other. We made a great life for ourselves. So now that she moves away from her mother to the city, she's kind of all alone when she finds out that she's pregnant, when she breaks up with her boyfriend and has to put her life back together. And so the one person who's there for her is her best friend. And one of the things, kind of a theme I wanted to go with, is that she refers to herself as a hot mess all the time, and I think that's really easy for women to do. You know, I'm a hot mess, and her best friend is the one who's there to kind of put it into perspective and say, you know, you are not as hot of a mess as you think you are. You got a new job. You pay for your apartment all by yourself. You are successful in your job, this and that. And so she kind of helps her look at it from a different point of view and kind of help pull herself out of her own head. But when the stuff really hits the fan in her dramatic situation, I knew that it was something that she would have to get through herself. And so in the real dire straits at the end, her best friend is not there, but she's there after to help her put the pieces back together.
I would consider myself more of a lukewarm mess. I'm not hot, maybe warmed over. So I get it. I get it. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So let's get through these questions rapid fire. We might get some Q&A. I see a couple in there, so we'll see. Leodora, Natalie, your Natalie, has some complicated family relationships, to put it very mildly. Which one shapes her the most, her relationship with her mother or the relationship with her sister, Claire?
I think pre-therapy Natalie would probably say her sister, but only because her relationship with her mum, who she's more like than she wants to admit, is so
Mhm.
complicated. I think difficult mother relationships was something I really want to explore in the book. I think the bond between mother and daughter can be so powerful and loving, but it's so easy for like a casual comment to really cut deep in that relationship. So I think also beyond the immediate family relationships, there's a lot to be said for chosen family in the book, and the way that brings healing. So that was also a really important thing for me there. But that's my short answer. I'm keeping it quick. I've made us
Yeah,
late.
that's good. Uh, Ilana, I really appreciate how each of the five characters are uniquely twisted. My favorite, Matilda was my girl. I love me some Matilda. Um, is there one
Mhm.
that you enjoyed writing the most?
I'm so glad you said that because she's my favorite too. Um, She's my favorite partly because in earlier drafts of the book, she was a completely different character called Sister Bernadette, who was actually a nun who had a completely different story and a completely different life. And in editing, this is one of those times where I was given some feedback about her, and unfortunately, Sister Bernadette got the axe, and I had to invent a whole new person. And Mrs. Worth is who came out, and Matilda, I think, is for me. She has a lot to tell us and a lot to teach us, and I'm glad actually that that change happened because I think she's a reader favorite too.
Yeah, it's wild because like definitely our life I don't want to spoil anything, but her life circumstances and mine are very different, but I still was like, you know what, I get it. I get the and I think that's the thing
Yeah,
about all these books. Like even if obviously I've never been a Hollywood actor, I've never killed anyone that I would admit to, but there's still that connection there. And so I really
yeah.
appreciate that. My next question is for Caro. Caleb, Natalie's husband. I love him. He was one of my favorite characters. He's horrible. I love him. How does his search for the meaning of masculinity factor into your novel?
Yeah, so Natalie and Caleb, they're a married couple, and they both come from similar backgrounds with these moral frameworks I've been talking about, and they both have natural personalities that don't fit within those frameworks. And so Natalie is constantly kind of, pushing against this understanding of what she knows of what she should be. And Caleb is in a similar position where he understands what it means to be a man, but that's not really what he wants, and that's not really what he is inclined to behave like. And so as I started to realize that, it just became this really, really satisfying strain to push them against one another, and also to push them against themselves, if that makes sense. Like they're both kind of in this, it's like when eagles lock claws and they just spiral into the ground, they're in like this eagle death spiral with one another, but they also don't really know how to get themselves out of it individually. So it's like these battling understandings of what it means to be a man and a woman, and Natalie maybe would be better at being a man and Caleb would be better at being a woman, but unfortunately those are not options that are available to them. And so it just becomes almost like a black comedy of errors where it's not an option in their world to give in to those desires for Caleb to play with his children or for Natalie to get a job that is outside of the home. And so what happens is like this real kind of gender war that I think is internal for both of them and then kind of manifests in weird ways.
The Eagles Death Spiral comment just kicked me out. But now, like, yes, that's literally
It's all
okay.
I think about.
We're gonna fail together, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
spectacular. We'll be together. That's great. Jennifer, technology is such a weapon in your book. There's a lot of like surveillance stuff going on. What technological trap freaked you out the most to write about?
Just dreaming up all the different ways someone could spy on another person.
Record.
I do not consider myself a very technologically savvy person, so I had to do, research into different things and make sure it was something that I could understand before I could write about it, of course. So that I don't want to spoil it, but there are some things that happen with Savannah's phone that were really frightening to me, that someone could see every single thing that you write, every email, every text, that someone could maybe change what you see or what you send out. That frightened me. It kind of reminded me of recent headlines with deep fake AI and things like that, where, someone could pose as you and just be so completely believable that everybody believes it, and they could do things in your name that are frightening and just really mess with your life. And so that's all of that fascinated me and was something I really enjoyed looking into for the book.
You enjoyed it? Oh my God. I was sitting here
Well,
like, oh no.
I
I know
mean,
what you
we're
mean.
thriller writers, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes just the imagining the dark things that people could do to each other. Obviously, I would never do that to someone, and hopefully, no one ever does that to me. But that's the fun thing about being an author, right? Is getting to get into someone else's head and what would possess you to do something like that.
Last question is for Isha, and then I think we might have time to do some Q&A. There's a fascinating discussion of fairness and justice threaded throughout your novel. And I wanted to ask you, without spoiling the ending, I don't want to get in trouble, if you think Dimple is just despite all that she does.
Yeah, oh my gosh, this is what I was scared of when I was writing. Like the other authors might relate, but I would Google like How to Get Away with Murder, and then like in parentheses, for authors, for fiction, like for creative writing. But but yeah, like something I would keep coming back to is the idea of fairness and justice. They're made up words, like all words. And so it's really hard to define because, everyone has their own definition for it. Like Dimple, she certainly thinks that she's justified. Me personally, like I probably wouldn't make a lot of the decisions that she does. Um, it's hard because I do root for her, like I feel for her, but I by the standards of my own moral compass, I would have to say no, she's not just.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's the great thing about all these books. I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't do that, but I understand. Like I get it, and I think that's the compelling part of a lot of these books. Where, again, like no, hopefully no one in here has engaged in these similar actions, but like yeah, I get it. Like I understand. Jennifer, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say that that is one of the most fun parts of being an author for me is getting into a villain's head and thinking, that this is as me looking at what they do, that's horrible. But how what would have to happen in their mind to make them feel like what they're doing is justified? That's one of the most fascinating parts of being an author to me.
Okay. I love this. This is a great discussion. I'm gonna answer one of these. It's a Q&A. These all sound wonderful. Are any too spicy for a high school library? I think it depends on the high schooler. I know when I was a kid, I was reading, I would read, kind of whatever, but there's not a ton of sex in any of them. I think there's more violence. So, if your kids are more that is what I would say. I would probably give them all PG-13 to R ratings, and I don't know. I think it really depends on the kid. So I think they're not spicy like sexy necessarily, but like more like violenty. See, Leodora says, uh, Caro, somebody else. I'm so fascinated by these kind of mommy influencers. Same. Was there anything that you discovered about the spirit of the internet that stuck with you or surprised you?
Did you say the spirit of the internet?
A sphere, like a ball.
Oh, the sphere of, oh, yeah. I mean, I could talk about that for hours. I think my relationship to the internet has changed dramatically in the last few years. And I think that that's true for a lot of people just with the advancements of AI. But I
Hmm.
view the internet writ large, like the open internet, as kind of like another form of pornography now. It's just like, it's a lot of slop. It's a lot of stuff that's designed for you to buy things. It's a lot of
Hmm.
misinformation. And that is true with your Instagram feed. It is true when you go to like a home feed, these recommendations, these algorithms. I have a very different relationship to the internet than I used to. And I had to do a lot of research just to understand like how algorithms work and why they work and what they do to our brains. And it has really changed my life in a positive way. I'll say it sounds very negative, but like I have a much calmer relationship now to being online because I think, at least from my perspective, I see it for what it is to me. And it is like very not real. And so
Hmm.
it's allowed me to really kind of drop a lot of the obsession I had with it and to really kind of remind myself that it is very possible to be offline. So largely positive, but my descriptions of the internet I think are increasingly negative, but my understanding of the world is increasingly positive, which I think is nice.
I appreciate that. That's a good way to end. Let's go outside and touch some grass. Well, not now. It's cold in
Mhm.
Chicago. But when it gets warmer, I will go outside and touch grass.
Yeah.
So we online all the time. We can just read some of these fabulous books. Thank you
Yeah.
guys so much. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you to the audience for commenting and participating. I got some compliments. I was like, I'm gonna take those with me and hold them in my heart. I love that. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to our publicists, all these great people. Next, we have two concurrent panels, first time fiction and risky and vulnerable nonfiction. Like I said, thank you guys so much. Please read these books. They will have you shook like they had me shook. Thank you guys so much for sharing your process and your stories and all that great stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.